Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second general meeting of the quarter. We have a lot of announcements for today, and our panel will be about different degree paths in clinical psych-related fields. So please do stay tuned for our amazing panel. Again, if you haven't already signed in, I'm just going to drop in the sign-in sheet one last time in the chat. So please do remember to sign in. And now we'll go ahead and get started. As for coming events and whatnot, I know our campus just recently announced that we'll be going back in person for classes. I just want to let everyone know that PsyChi's events will remain mostly remote for the quarter because we want to ensure that everyone has access to these events, but also is able to stay safe at home or wherever they are. The only thing that will be online is, or in person and remote, will be our office hours. So I will be going back in office starting next week. So if you're interested in just seeing me in person or getting at least somewhat of a PsyChi interaction in person, feel free to come by office hours. And as for our other events, we might have a few in the future that will be in person, but those are all to be determined. So please do keep an eye out for your emails, and otherwise for the rest of the events, we'll talk about it in the next slides. So I would like to have my treasurer, James, talk about the Krispy Kreme fundraiser.
Hey everyone, James here. Fundraiser has been extended to the end of tomorrow, so that'll be Tuesday, 11:59 p.m. But more importantly, does anyone know the current price of a dozen original glazed donuts? It should be on the bottom, bottom left. It's $15.49, so that's the current price of the Krispy Kreme original glazed donuts. But on the other hand, for the fundraiser, we are asking for $10 for the digital dozen. And then, so yes, you'll be saving money by treating yourself to some donuts and supporting PsyChi at the same time. And for the instructions to purchase a digital dozen card, just Venmo $10 to our Venmo account, which is JAMBZ-C. And then the template is full name, your RMail, and then just add PsyChi fundraiser. And then you can make the Venmo payment private, and be sure to not tag it as a business transaction because it is a fundraiser. And then the digital dozen will be emailed to you from ucrpsychi@gmail.com by the end of that week, or in this case, it will probably be the end of tomorrow. And feel free to share the fundraiser with your friends. And for each purchase made under your name, you'll be entered into the raffle for PsyChi merch. And then for that template, it'll be for your name and then their email and PsyChi fundraiser. And then this is what the digital dozen looks like. On the right, you can see how there's a barcode. You can just take a screenshot of it and they'll accept it. You don't have to actually like pull up the link at the store. You can just take a picture of that when you have your digital dozen. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, James. And now I'm going to talk about our presentation that's coming up next week from City Year. So this is an info session from them, and it'll be followed by a Q&A panel with two of their currently serving members. And if you haven't already heard about it, City Year is an educational nonprofit org dedicated to helping students succeed in the schools. And so it's pretty much like a gap year program. If you're interested in more information, I actually applied to it, so I have some notes on it. And you can also check out their website, which is in the slides as well. And next, we do have our transfer student mixer coming up soon. I would like to invite all of our transfer students, whether you are already an official member or maybe just a prospective PsyChi member. I would like you all to meet each other and just get to know some other fellow faces within our department. And we'll also be inviting our transfer student alumni to this social. So that is happening next Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m. And please do stay tuned for that. If you are a transfer student, I hope to see you there. And next, I believe I'm having my program coordinator, Brandon, come talk about PWC once more.
Yeah, thank you, Jana. So I'm Brandon, program coordinator for PsyChi, and our larger event for winter quarter, if you remember from last general meeting, is our psychology winter camp. So just in case for those who weren't able to attend last general meeting, really quick, PWC is our annual virtual winter quarter event where we reach out to high school students in the Southern California area. And our ultimate goal is to encourage them all to pursue higher education, as well as introduce them to what college life is really like. They'll be given the opportunity to meet with psychology undergrads, Psych-Hi alumni, and UCR faculty through a series of panels. So if you happen to know any high schoolers or you have siblings that are in high school, I highly recommend you to check it out, even if they aren't really interested in psychology, because it kind of gives them an insight on what like college generally is about. And then I also wanted to mention that we are still looking for camp leaders. So applications for camp leaders do close on Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Commitment wise, it would be two 1-hour training sessions, week 5 and week 7, and then just attending the event on February 19th and 20th, and the times are listed there. If you have any questions or concerns, definitely like drop questions in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them, or feel free to reach out to us through our Instagram, UCRPWC, or through our email, which is ucriversidepwc@gmail.com. And then I'll pass it over to my administrative coordinator to talk about this other volunteer opportunity that we have for you all.
Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin. I hope you can hear me. And someone please drop in the chat if you can hear me. Okay, thank you. Okay, so like Brandon said, PwC, we're going to be having a series of panels. And then one of the panels that we are currently going to be recruiting for is the Our Life panel. It's for undergraduate students to share their campus experience with our high school attendees. Specifically, we'll be asking you about like, what is your experience with extracurricular activities, what student organizations you might be in, like Psych-Hi, if you're in any clubs or athletics, as well as maybe if you're a research lab assistant, or if you had any work or volunteer experience, how do you juggle that with your coursework? So we are looking for about 3 to 4 panelists. I'll be emailing, I or someone else on our team will be emailing out the Google form for you if you're interested in applying. The deadline to apply is January 31st at midnight. That is a Sunday. If you do happen to speak on the panel, it is worth 1 activity point. And oh yes, sorry, I forgot to mention, anyone is available to apply for the panel, regardless of whether or not you are a prospective or official Psych-Hi member. And also, even if you're already a camp leader for the event, you are also welcome to apply as well. And next, we should be talking about our fundraiser for PwC. So this is going to be our shirt this year for PwC. It's going to be $19, including tax, not shipping. Shipping will be covered by Psych-Hi. You get 2 activity points for purchasing. Please Venmo the amount to James at James Z. Please make it private, and then include in your payment your full name, your UCR mail, and then please label as PwC fundraiser along with your t-shirt size. The sale will open today, January 24th, and it closes on February 24th. Yes, thank you.
Yes, and you heard that right. Shipping is covered by Psych-Hi because y'all are UCR students. So please do participate. This will be a great experience for everyone, but also for the campers that do come to our 2nd annual camp. So again, we would hope to see you either volunteer or at least participate in the fundraiser. And again, a huge thank you to Brandon and Caitlin for presenting on this. And last but not least, for our announcements, I would like to re-promote elections because that is happening soon. So our officer application is closing week 6 Friday, and the guidelines have already been sent out as of last week. If you're interested in the chapter leader application, that will be opening next Tuesday, and all the guidelines will be sent out in that email. So please do keep an eye out on all that. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to email us, drop the question in our Discord elections category, or come to office hours, which you already know is on Wednesdays. And that's all of our announcements. If you have any questions, again, feel free to drop it in chat or email us. And now we'll go ahead and get started with our panel, which is about degree paths in clinical psych-related fields, featuring all of our amazing panelists, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves. First up, we have Dr. Yates.
Hi, thanks. I go by Tuppet, so please feel free to call me that. When you say doctor, I look around like, who the hell are they talking about? Thanks for having me. I'm a professor of psychology here at UCR. I'm in the developmental area. I study risk and resilience among adversity exposed kids. And I was trained in a kind of an unusual program. There's a handful of doctoral programs in clinical psychology that specialize in child psychology. And so one of those is at the University of Minnesota. So I actually have a joint PhD in developmental psychology on the one hand and clinical science or clinical psychology on the other hand. It is a research intensive program, though the vast majority of its graduates actually go on to be clinicians. And I actually thought I might do that as well, and then had sort of a change of heart, which we can talk about. I also am quite invested in kids who have experienced the child welfare system. So I founded and now run our Guardian Scholars Program for foster youth here at UC Riverside. So that's just a little bit about me. I worked mostly in child protection. I also worked as a college counselor, worked in medical settings. So I have a good amount of clinical experience. So I hopefully can answer some of your questions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Simone Youssef. I'm currently a fourth year grad PsyD student over at Alliant International University. I'm focusing on my clinical PsyD in health psychology, so looking more at health-related health service fields of psychology and niches. I graduated from UCR in 2017 and I was part of Psych, so it's nice to be back. I'm currently doing my internship, which is my last year of clinical training over in Nebraska. And I'm over here working in a hospital, kind of in line with that health emphasis training and experience that is embedded in my program. I've had a lot of experience working with individuals across the lifespan, ranging from really young kiddos to adults. And I have worked in a wide range of settings. So right now I'm in a hospital, but I have worked in clinics. I have also worked in residential facilities like the Ronald McDonald House, if any of you are familiar. And I've also had some experience over at UCLA in some of their specialty clinics as well.
There we go. Hello, everybody. So my name is Priscilla Casillas. I also graduated back in 2017. Woohoo! I am a graduate from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. I will explain a little bit about why I didn't go the PsyD route, but my experience is mainly school-based therapy. I love working with teens and families. So that's mainly my experience. I'm currently working with now ages 6 through 24. So I've expanded my age range a little bit more. And I can go ahead and talk about what that experience has been, especially where I work for Uplift Family Services right now. I'm actually being introduced to foster youth who've been removed from the home, and really getting them through that trauma, as Tuppet has mentioned, is a really, really hard thing to work with.
Awesome. That was great to hear. Sorry, Jenna. Hi, my name is Tiffany and I'll be moderating this panel. Thank you again, panelists, for joining us tonight. And to our members, feel free to ask questions anytime, whether it is raising your hand, dropping a question in the chat. I want to make sure that there's enough time for all of your questions to be answered. We will go in the order in which y'all introduce yourself. So Tuppet and Simone and then Priscilla. So to start things off, why did you decide to pursue your field in clinical psychology?
Oh, if only we had a coherent life narrative. Well, I didn't think I'd graduate high school, and a teacher made it so I did. Then I went to college and I dropped out, and another teacher made it so I went back. And then I was not going to go to grad school, but a professor in college suggested I should and told me what kinds of schools to apply to and then told me where to go. So I guess the point is to just explain that not everybody's life is linear. Not everybody knows what they want to do. I always wanted to work with maltreated kids from the time I was quite young. But how to do that was sort of a shifting image. So originally I wanted to be an art therapist. And then I wanted to be a social worker. And then I ended up being a clinical PhD, and I assumed I'd be a clinician, and then I ended up being a professor. So how did I pick? I listened to mentors who told me what I was good at and what I was less good at, and things I never thought I could do. So I was actually kept out of school in middle school because I couldn't learn to write. My handwriting was terrible. I was privately educated. And therefore, these annoying schools that have very, very high standards, they wouldn't let me go because my English was so poor, my handwriting, my ability to write sentences, my grammar, etc. Anyways, I had to do all this special tutoring, and then they let me back in. And then as it turns out, when I went to college, when I went back, a professor was like, "You're an amazing writer." So who knew? And so things that I thought I'd never be good at, I ended up kind of being good at least according to other people. I'm a terribly slow reader. All my siblings have very severe dyslexia or reading disorder. I do not, but I have a spatial disability. And so I can't find my way out of a box. I can't do geometry, even though I was extremely good at math. And reading is very hard for me, although I'm not dyslexic. I read like a third of the pace of my wife, for example. So I never thought I'd be an academic, but, pay attention to the advice you get from teachers and others, because they often know what's best. And so I just sort of followed advice and ended up where I ended up. But I did always know I wanted to work with maltreated kids. Most of us are interested in what we're interested in for one reason or another. A lot of us do me search. I had a complicated developmental history, which led me to be interested in why some kids make it and other kids struggle. So risk and resilience was kind of close to home. And that's what I was always interested in, first clinically and then research-wise. When I graduated with my PhD, and then I went to internship, I did my internship at Harvard. So the same thing that, forgive me, and Simone, I may have just butchered your name and I apologize, but the same thing that you're doing, I had to do as well. So when you finish your doctorate or your PsyD, a PsyD is also a doctorate. So when you finish those degrees, you have to then do a year of sort of like the equivalent of a residency. So I went and did mine fully thinking I'd become a clinician. I'd done many years of therapy while I was in grad school, which I highly recommend if you want to be a clinician. And, my therapist saved and changed my life, and I wanted to offer that too. But then I went on internship and saw what full-time clinical practice is like and who I'd be working with, and just realized it wasn't for me. Like behind every kid was just another one, like it didn't change. And so I was more interested in policy and kind of broader system impact. And so that's why I ended up going towards research. But even after my internship, I did a year as the campus shrink for Wellesley College out on the East Coast, because you need to accrue a large number of hours to be eligible for a license. So even after you've done your whole degree, you need a whole bunch of hours to be able to sit for your license. So I did another year of clinical work, which kind of confirmed that I love the clinical work, but I wanted to do research primarily. So I did the professorial route, and then I started Guardian Scholars, which kind of scratches my clinical itch. I get to work with kids from all different kinds of backgrounds, a lot obviously very trauma exposed. And it's kind of cool because I get to hang with them without all the boundaries that are required of clinical work. So it's even better. I get to like celebrate their birthdays, which, you can't do as a clinician necessarily, although there's lots of gray in the clinical world. So that's kind of the scoop of how I ended up where I ended up. I ended up at UCR just because I got so damn lucky that I married this awesome woman who's also an academic, and it's very hard to get jobs together as academics. And she got a job at Cal State Fullerton. So I took a job at UCR where I had never thought I would end up in Southern California. We're kind of snobby on the East Coast. I'm from Boston. And I'm so grateful I ended up here because you all are so awesome. That's all I have to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was so interesting to hear. It's crazy how life changes and lead us to where we are now. And Simone?
Yeah, so I did not know what I wanted to do. I stumbled across psychology after taking an elective course, and I dove into that, changed my major a couple of times, ended up in psychology, and I knew that I wanted to do more with that. So I, like Tuppet was saying, I listened and talked to a lot of different people in the field, made connections, listened to mentors, spoke with family members who were thinking about going down that route as well, grad school in psychology. And I did a lot of research and ended up on a couple choices, PhD, PsyD. Those were kind of my two that I was going between at the time. And I landed on PsyD because it does emphasize the clinical realm of the degrees, the doctoral degrees. And that was something that I really wanted to do. I gained some experience, volunteer experience in applied settings, and that confirmed for me that I wanted to do more clinically based work, not so much the research side of things. So that's what helped me kind of funnel down and get to where I am in choosing my PsyD program.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. And Priscilla?
So I didn't realize I was actually going to be into this field, considering that I was the person in the chair almost 10 years ago. So my career ended up going, you know what, I want to be some sort of therapist. I don't know whether it's physical or mental health. I don't know. I want to be some sort of therapist. So I originally came into UCR for orientation as a chemistry major. By the end of the first day of orientation, I was a neuroscience major. And by the end of my first year, I was like, you know what, I can't do this. I can't do the research. My heart and my mind are not capable of that. So same thing as Aunt Simone, I'm so sorry if I butchered. My heart was not there. I had asked everybody and everything, and I stumbled upon psychology. So while I was doing that, I was having therapy with my own therapist, going through my own thing. And, you know, it really did open my eyes to, like, you know what, I love to help people. I love to be there and really listen and be observant. Yeah, I can't talk right now. 6 hours of sessions does that to you. And, you know, it really did become, I can't do the research. I can't see it myself following through with that. I love to be in nit and gritty in the field out there. So yes, I'm not able to celebrate birthdays as maybe Tuppet does with the kids that I see in the foster system, but I do it in one of, like, you know what, regardless of what they've been going through, there is at least someone that they can turn to and know, you know what, they do care for me. They genuinely want to see me grow and be happy and live my life the way, you know, whoever intended it to be. So that's how I really just said, you know what, I'm not going to go my PsyD route. I'm happy where I'm at. And I'm currently finishing my hours. I'm down at the last 800 out of 3,000 hours to get licensed. So that is currently where I'm at and how I ended up here.
Thank you. Once again, crazy how life changes, huh? I know you all briefly touched on this before when you're giving your introductions, but what specifically are you currently doing in your field or research? So, like, for example, what does a day-to-day look like to you?
My days are awesome because I schedule them myself. I don't answer to anybody. I have no boss. If I don't feel terribly well or I don't have a good night of sleep, I can just move one of my grad students because they are super flexible and they can tolerate mild, failures of empathy, in a way that clients cannot, right? So when you're a clinician, you cannot move a session. It has so much more meaning to a client than the meaning it has for you. You can't take vacations that are a month and 6 weeks long. Some people do, but it's very difficult. 2 weeks is usually kind of the max that a client will hold you in mind. For the kinds of folks that I want to work with, which are trauma survivors, it's a long time to try and take a long break from them. And yet I am married to a German, and Europeans have very excellent work-life balance, and therefore I'm expected to take month-long vacations more than once a year, which I do. It's awesome because I can go write a grant in, Kenya. It's awesome. So my day-to-day life is very much my own, which is great. I do work all the time, and I have work on my mind all the time. However, as a clinician, I had my clients on my mind all the time as well. So that is similar. I think the academic life, the research life, you're always up against deadlines. There's always something that you need to tend to. Clinically, you always have them on your mind. There's always, depending on what kind of work you do, there's almost always 1 to 2 patients that are at risk. So you're worrying about their safety or their well-being. So those are similar. You're just always very active, but there's a lot more flexibility, I think, in the academic life. There's also a great deal of versatility. So I teach a bit, I do research, I mentor grad students, I mentor undergrads, I run this nonprofit. So you get to do lots of different things, and a good clinician likewise builds in that kind of variability. It's all on the clinical side, right? So they're doing some school-based work, they're doing individual, they may have a family or a couple, they may have 1 or 2 high risk, they may be providing supervision to trainees, they may be consulting to a school district, but whatever you do, you need to shake it up, because you do not want to be doing 9 to 5 therapy 5 days a week. You will totally burn out. So at the moment, my lab is looking at whether or not so-called maladaptive behaviors like aggression may actually be protective in contexts of risk. So there's been work showing that kids who cope effectively despite adverse life events seem to show some physical health ramifications as they move into adulthood. Stress-related disorders, autoimmune disorders, various kinds of orthopedic, arthritic kinds of conditions. And there seems to be a so-called cost of coping. And so the question then is, well, for kids who are maybe a little bit more aggressive in contexts of risk, they obviously will show deficits behaviorally and in some of other adjustment outcomes, but maybe their physical health, some of that stressful wear and tear on the body may be muted for those kids. So that's what we're doing in our current longitudinal study. The kids are now 17. We've been watching them grow up since they were 4. And then I've also done a big study of kids aging out of the foster care system as well. Those are kind of my 2 big projects.
Great, thank you. And Simone?
Yeah, so kind of like what Tuppet was just saying, it's very jam-packed in the clinical applied world, seeing clients. So I work 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and sometimes later than that, depending on kind of what the day brings and documentation and all of that. It really depends on what setting you're in. So I work in a hospital setting, and it's actually rural integrated care. So out in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska. So that's going to look different than a typical hospital area in a suburban or metropolitan area, just considering all of that kind of stuff. My schedule might be a bit more tight because of the need in the community and being one of the only resources there. So I do a lot of different things. I do some group work in the schools, so school-based interventions and groups. I do a lot of individual therapy. Like I mentioned earlier, I work with individuals across the lifespan. So half my day I'll be working with kids, and the other 50% of the day I'll be working with adults. That's kind of how I've chosen to divvy up my time and get my experience, my hours. I also do some family therapy sprinkled in there, couples therapy. It's a little bit of everything, especially being in rural community. So that's what my day looks like. And on top of that, before I went over to internship, I'm a student. So I have my dissertation, which is a big project that you would complete for a lot of programs, doctoral programs and MFTs if you do a thesis there. So I am juggling that in the mix, and that's taking up a good amount of my time. And I'm a person on top of all of that. So I need to schedule some time in for self-care and address my needs and therapy and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's a glimpse of a day in the life of a PsyD doctoral candidate on their internship.
Definitely super huge. You should take care of yourself, take some time for yourself. I hope everyone keeps that in mind. Priscilla, how does your day today look like?
So thankfully, the agency that I work for, I'm salary based. So realistically, I can work when I want. I can change my hours during the week, during the day if I need to. Thankfully, my supervisors that I have that oversee my work are super, super open-minded. So if I do need a mental health day, they are more than welcome to give that to me. I happen to work it with a team. So I work in intensive services program. So it's just a step below residential. So we have full partnership programs. We have all of these really intensive groups. So if I can't make it, I can ask a team member, hey, please check on this client for me. Or even then, thankfully during emergencies, I have that flexibility to walk away and still know that my clients are being cared for. So that I could not do if I were a high school counselor, one of two counselors, or my last agency that I also worked for. But as soon as 5 o'clock, or when my last session is at 6 o'clock, my phone is off. I am not answering. There are on-call therapists in our agency. We do rotate. So when it is my week, my phone is always on, ringer's always on. I do have to go out to emergencies to assess if that is the case. If a client tells me, you know what, I want to kill myself, I'm going to hurt someone, I'm going to hurt myself. I am on the line to make sure, okay, how are you doing? Do I need to assess you? Do you need to go to the hospital? What can we do? What is a safety plan? But otherwise, I've learned to really shut it off so that way it doesn't affect me in my own personal life. It does bleed in sometimes, like and Simone said, we are human. I do bring that in. I do have a lot of that humanity when I go into all my cases, and making sure that they are a person. They are not a number. They are not a thing. They are not a diagnosis. They are a person. So that is where I come in and how I come in into all my cases. A lot of the therapists that I work with, they tell me, wow, you're so direct and this and that. And I said, well, yeah, I work with teens. I gotta show them who the real me is. Otherwise, I'm just as fake as the other people that they've seen in their life. So that is my daily life, other than being surrounded by paperwork. That never changes, whether you're in research or dissertation, or even in just a clinical setting of seeing clients here and there. You're always surrounded by paperwork and assessments. So that is my glimpse in the daily life.
Thank you. All these experiences are so different, yet they're all under clinical psych. It's crazy. For this next question, how did you all choose your degree program over other degrees? And how exactly did you choose the school you are currently going to or that you went to over other schools?
They admitted me. Yeah, I didn't do any of it right because I haven't done anything right in life. But it all worked out. That's the beauty of it. I only applied to 5 schools. Generally, they recommend for clinical PhDs that you apply to 15 to 20 because the acceptance rate on average is 5% or less, much, much lower than vet school, for example. So it's a real pain in the ass to get in. But I only applied to 5, and I did not get in anywhere that I interviewed because I'm a terrible interviewer. I got into the one school that had never met me, and that is where I went. And why the PhD? Because this professor told me that's what I should get. The PsyD is younger. It came around in the 60s, but has really gained tremendous popularity over the last 15 years or so. And I'm pretty freaking old. So the PsyD, I had never even heard of it when I applied to school. It is now much more common. I don't know what I would have decided if it had existed. One thing about the PsyD is that you often have to pay your own way. So, and Simone, I don't know if you're going to be comfortable doing this, but I think it would be helpful for the students to know how the payment works, because a PsyD can run you a ton of money because they're primarily private schools. And they may offer some scholarship, but it's not like a PhD where you're fully funded. They pay you to go to school. I made more money as a PhD than I did as a postdoc. Like it was really annoying. But anyways, yeah, so that's how I ended up where I ended up. They accepted me. That's always a good start. And I didn't have a lot of choices in what I was looking for. I was pretty sure that the PhD is what I was supposed to do because Lou Lipset told me to do it. So it was a good recommendation, as it turns out.
Thank you. I'm currently in the middle of thinking of graduate school, and I feel like I might be on the same path, whichever one accepts me. And Simone, how about you?
Yeah, for me, I started applying after I graduated and kind of wish I would have gained more experience before then, even if I did get some volunteer experience. But I started applying and a school actually reached out to me and my application wasn't done. And they told me, hey, finish it because we want to interview you. And it was a very quick process. I think that was the only full application that I had submitted. I think what helped facilitate that process was that I did have some volunteer experience in the field, kind of going into it. That I'm told that helps when applying to PsyD programs, but it's not like a make it or break it per se. It just kind of beefs up your CV. So that was that. I started the program after I did some research, and I was very selective in where I did apply. I considered a lot of different things like emphasis areas, the kind of training I would get. What else did I think about? Yeah, if people were employed there that could help me with my dissertation, like could be good mentors and align kind of with my interests. So those were all things that I considered. And that's what led me to Alliant in Los Angeles. And it worked out really well in my favor. So no complaints there. Yeah, that is how I chose the PsyD program at Alliant.
Thank you so much. We actually did have a presentation with Alliant the other day, and you can watch the recording, people, if you would like to learn more about their school. Priscilla?
Alliant was actually one of my choices when I was looking into graduate school. It was between Alliant, the Chicago School, and Azusa Pacific. It kind of just landed in my lap. One of the professors had reached out to me after we had met, because they were doing one of those like little mixers of just like not even applying there, just if you were curious, you got to meet the professors and see if like this is really the school you wanted. And that's actually kind of how I even moved into the degree because I didn't even know what to do. I wanted to be an art therapist. So I was working on double majoring at UCR while I was still there, to be an art major as well as a psych major. So this was maybe the last 2 quarters of fourth year at UCR. I was doing these mixers and really just trying to get into it, but I really, really love the professors that I met when I was there, and I just said, you know what, yeah, why not? Let me start that application right now. And next thing I know, the week later, I was admitted. So that's really how it was. I wasn't sure really what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to be a social worker, if I wanted to be a marriage and family therapist, not knowing that you can still be a clinician regardless. Everybody just immediately thinks child protective services when they hear social worker. So, that's how kind of I was learning when I went to that mixer of just, what does it mean? What do they know? What can they teach me to help me make that decision of what I want to be? So that's pretty much how I landed at the Chicago school.
Thank you so much. These are like great experiences that you guys went through that we definitely will take into account when we start applying. I was wondering, is there anything you would have done differently for your path?
Well, I did it all wrong. So I didn't know about research. I didn't know you should contact people beforehand. I didn't know about like trying to reach out to particular professors or anything like that. But I did have a very strong record. So I published while I was still in college. And I went to a very, whatever, good university on paper anyways. So that's what got me in. And I ended up in a good place for me, especially because I forgot to mention that I then went to get my doctorate and I tried to drop out of that too. It's just like a common theme. The only place I didn't try and drop out of was UCR. So there you go. Came here, I was happy. And Minnesota was very forgiving of that, I should say. But yeah, I would say I did it all wrong and it worked out. But I had other things going for me that kind of allowed me to break the rules that way. I wish I had done my homework and thought more about what kind of research I wanted to do. And what I generally recommend to students is go on to Google Scholar, limit your search to since 2010, type in search terms for things that you're interested in, particular disorders, particular populations, see who's writing cool stuff about that topic, and then Google where they are, because there's almost zero correlation between a school name like Harvard, Yale, and the quality of the degree. Because the very best psychology degrees, one of them is Urbana-Champaign, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, which is like cow country. It's a great flipping program. So there's not a big correlation between the undergraduate reputation and the graduate school. So you really want to be following the researcher. And the reason why I say make sure to limit your search to 2010 and forward is because I get a lot of inquiries of people saying like, I want to study this thing I studied 20 years ago, 15 years ago that I don't study anymore. So you want to make sure you're reaching out to people who are doing that thing now / recently, and you don't make a dated request of somebody.
Thank you so much. That was amazing advice. And Simone?
I just want to make sure the question was what I wish I would have known or what I would have done differently.
Yeah, what would you have, sorry, my words fumbled. What would you have done differently to be able to get to where you are today or your path? Okay, thank you. I don't know that I would have done anything differently. It happened pretty quickly. It just happened. It aligned that way for me. Maybe one thing I would have considered was kind of giving myself some time after undergrad. I think that would have been beneficial for me just because it was a very quick turnaround completing my undergrad and then jumping right into grad school just a few short months later.
That was something that I definitely would have considered more, knowing that there are not very many breaks. Once you start your program, it's pretty much go, go, go. And it can be very tiring at times. It's very rewarding though. So yeah, that was something that popped into my mind when you asked that question, but it all worked out for me, and it's all a learning curve nonetheless. So
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear that it worked out for you. And what about you, Priscilla?
As soon as I saw the PowerPoint slides, the first thing I said out loud was take a break. And my boyfriend was in the same room with me, and he started laughing because he saw me through my whole journey, graduating from UCR, moving to grad school, and where I'm at now. I definitely would have loved to take a break to just relax and be me and just sit with it a little bit more, to just not feel pressured. Because of course, being a first gen person, there's a lot to deal with. So for all of those who also relate or can understand, definitely take that gap year if you can, because then you're kind of just really trying to just make it through, from if you have a job to actually doing your research, doing your homework, going to presentations or lectures, and then still having to do your internship. So all those things really do add on, and you really wish you had that break. And I had a little taste of what it was like to write a dissertation, and that was my deal breaker. As much as I love getting to know more and wanting to learn more, and really having to want to do that, I just said, nope, can't. And that was kind of the end of it for me. And I said, I'm good where I'm at. But that's why I'm just like, take that break, because actually your body will tell you so. Take that break. For those of you really quick that I didn't hear it last year, I actually had to take a leave of absence at UCR at one point because of all the stress and everything that was going on. So I had to leave and then come back and finish. So either you take your break or your body will do it for you.
Thank you. Again, emphasizing breaks. People, please take breaks. Your body can only handle so much. We did get a chat from Tapit, and it is I've quoted, boring giant talk on this topic, but highly recommend to watch it so you do have a better understanding of this. We do have 7 minutes left. If you have questions, please put them in chat. We want to get to you. We want to get to your questions. So our next question is, what are some green and red flags to look for in programs?
Sorry, you asked green and red flags for programs? You must go to an accredited program. Do not go to a non-accredited program. End of story. Do not go to an accredited program. Do not go to an online school. Do not go to a for-profit school. University of Phoenix is a very common one in particular that has a lot of psych degrees. I mean, you can go, but your odds of getting an accredited internship are quite low after that. And if you don't get an accredited internship, you're kind of up a creek. So yeah, be careful.
Yeah, definitely. I'll keep that in mind. And Simone?
I don't know about green or red flags, other than yes, the accreditation, that is very, very important, especially down the line as you look for employment and kind of move throughout your career. I guess just another thing to keep in mind, kind of doing the research as much as you can into that program and seeing if how it's set up aligns with your values and your goals. I know that may change throughout the process, but just keeping in mind that, yeah, you can make the best of the experience, but also knowing kind of what you're getting into if you have options is, I think, a helpful thing to kind of keep in mind.
Thank you. I'm trying to quickly cover this. There's a lot of chat. Priscilla.
Yeah, no, same thing. I've actually seen it happen where a colleague of mine went to a non-accredited school and graduated after 3 years, only to find out that she couldn't actually be licensed through her board, and she had to go back and take makeup classes for that. So also make sure you're doing your research depending on whether or not you're going to be in a therapist, an accredited, with PsyD or a PhD. Make sure you're checking your board requirements when you're doing this, and that your school meets those board requirements along with their accreditation. So that's actually a really huge thing to make sure, because then otherwise you're going to have to go back and find those courses or to make sure that you can get whatever it is that you're looking for.
Thank you. And tying into programs and looking into programs, what can we do to be a better candidate when applying to school? And does it matter if our undergraduate degree is a BS versus a BA when applying?
Okay, sorry, I just see these questions in the chat too. A BS is always better because it's considered a more difficult degree, a more rigorous degree. It demonstrates that you have capacity to function in the sciences, and it makes you eligible for Phi Beta Kappa, which is the most prestigious of the honors groups. And if you can snag it, that's awesome. If you look at the faculty, even at any place, but like look at our faculty, I'd say more than half of us are Phi Beta Kappa. That's a very common theme in faculty positions all over. If you're Phi Beta Kappa and you're applying for clinical programs, clinical PhD programs, they will immediately sniff you out because it just is it's a really great sign. So for sure that. There was another question, which is, what if you got 2 years into your PhD and qualify? Yeah, so if you quit a PhD program after 2 years, you do leave with the MA. Same thing with the PsyD. It sounds like Aunt Simone has written it. It works the same way, Aunt Simone. If you were to drop out of your PsyD program after completing the second year, you'd drop out with an MA, I presume. Not that you can do anything with an MA, but yeah.
My understanding is actually that you do not keep the MA. That may be program specific. I'm not sure, but that's how it was explained to me at my program. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's program specific. I have a lot of colleagues that are continuing on their PhD in PsyD, and they keep their masters. They actually graduate and walk with the rest of the class, and they just add on whatever it is, the doctorates that they're working on. That's actually the option that I have. I can still go back to my school and say, I want to finish my degree. I want to go on to the PsyD or the PhD, and I will continue where I left off.
The issue is that with an MA in psychology, the only thing you can do is the MFT, right? Yeah. So MSW is a gilded degree. It's very restrictive. You must get a social work degree. Same thing with counseling. The MFT ends up becoming kind of a catch-all because any master's degree, you can become eligible as long as you've got the proper coursework. So Priscilla, did you start with a PsyD, decide you wanted to pause, take the MFT, and now maybe you'll go back or you won't?
So I actually went in with the mindset of, you know what, I'm just going to see how it is. I'm going to do my master's, but I still had the PsyD in the back of my head. So I was like, you know what, I still have that option. I'm allowed to. So if I say, yes, give me the go ahead, I want to keep going, they allowed me to do that. But yeah, no, my degree actually specifically says clinical psychology. So I'm technically a clinician. I have a master's in clinical psychology, but I specialize in marriage and family therapy because that is the route I chose to go. But yeah, as you were saying with the social work, that is specifically licensed. That's more, I'm forgetting my terms right now. Sorry, I actually had COVID a couple weeks ago, so I'm still brain fogged here and there a little bit. but definitely more outside. You're thinking ecosystems and how the actual social work goes, rather than sticking with the person to person in the marriage and family therapy perspective.
But I just want to make sure we don't kind of confuse people. If you finish with a master's in clinical psych, you are only eligible to get the MFT.
Yes.
You don't get the LPCC, which requires the master's in
No.
counseling. So like if you go to Pepperdine's master's in clinical psych, you'll be able to sit for the MFT. So
Correct.
with a master's in clinical psych, the only way to become a clinician is to do the MFT route.
Correct.
Is that
you
your-
would have to
yeah, okay.
you would have to actually do the courses, additional courses for the LPCC, and take the test for both. I know there's a couple additional courses for LPCC when you do go that route. So if you want to be clinical psychology route, you will be an MFT. But if you want to be also an LPCC, it's a little bit more openings for that. You can take the additional courses for that. I would definitely suggest talking with your counselors when you get to grad school to help you with that and making sure you're selecting the right courses.
Yeah, and the openings is very important. So that's why, I mean, one of the best clinicians that was ever at UCR was an MFT. So MFTs can be great clinicians, but in terms of salary and job openings, the hierarchy will go, social workers have the most advertising. LPCC is the second most, MFT is the third most. Now, an MFT can apply for many jobs that are advertising for a social worker because they just want a licensed clinician, but the ad will say social worker, and that will always give them a leg up. The salaries typically are a little bit higher for social work than they are for LPC, than they are for MFT. So those are just important things to keep in mind as you're thinking ahead. And the salaries are never high. If you want to help people, you are not going to be rich. You will be able to eat, you'll be able to have a family, you'll own a home, but like you are not going to like go to Silicon Valley and exploit people if you want to be rich, but helping people is never going to make you rich.
Yes, agreed. Unfortunately, we as interns and as registered associates, that's what they call us when you haven't been licensed yet. They call us associates. You're not going to get much money. Sorry to say, until you're licensed and you create your own salary or whatever it is that you want, you can make your own pay. Otherwise, no, you're not going to get paid much starting off. That's what happens when you want to help people. You got to take what you get sometimes.
Well, and that's why it's very important that you pay attention to loans. And that's why the PhD is often preferable, because you won't have loans. But I get a lot of kids who get into UCLA social work and they get into Cal State Fullerton social work. And then they're like, well, should I really go? And I'm like, no, go to Cal State Fullerton, because at the master's level degrees, people don't really give a crap where you went to school. What they care about is your practica placements, where you're actually getting your clinical hours. That's also who's most likely to hire you. So I'd say 9 out of 10 students pick a Cal State MA program over one of the UC MA programs because it's more affordable. And it's just like, I had a kid who went to Smith and then really wanted to live in California. So that, and just one other piece of advice for the PhD, you want to get your degree away from where you want to live and raise a family, if that's your thing, right? So you want to be in California because everybody wants to be in California. Leave the state to get your PhD. For PsyD, master's degrees, anything clinical is strictly clinical. It's very smart to get your degree where you might want to live long-term, because the place that's most likely to hire you is where you did your practica, your internships as a grad student.
And to talk to Phoebe's question, that's actually something I'm currently doing at the moment, since I will be, and going back to Tuppet, what she was saying, I will actually be leaving the state pretty soon. So I actually have to learn their laws and their ethics in order to practice and live there. But thankfully, California has the most strictest requirements. So you can actually move to any other state and not really have to worry, with the exception of a couple of states. I can't remember which ones off the top of my head, but their requirements for you to be licensed there are less than it is in California. California has one of the strictest ones. But that being said, you would definitely have to make sure you are really looking into what you're looking for, what the place is, the demographic, and where your practice is going to be placed. Is it going to be affordable for the people in your region? Is it also what they need in that particular area? Are we looking more at eating disorders? Are we looking more at depression? Or what are we looking at in that specific area and where you're going to be placing your practice? You can also do what's called a group practice, and you can have other people who you trust, or I forgot what it was called, but you can also make it a collaborative where you're not really selling or really trying to bribe other people to go and see the person next door to you. But say, for example, you have a lawyer in the building, you have a therapist, you have a social worker, you can have someone from some sort of resource. I'm thinking of like food banks. Like you can have partnerships nearby or working in the same building as you. Is like, hey, you know what? You're talking to me about divorce and we're, doing one-on-one therapy. You know what? I don't have that legal advice, but the person that works in this building has legal advice. If you'd like, I can refer you to them. So that also keeps all the business really good and making sure you have people coming in your private practice. As well as, thankfully, you can be your own boss. You don't have to follow any specific guidelines of how to write your notes or what you're assessing. You have ideas if you're working in agencies and getting an idea of what their assessments look like, how you're bringing them in, making sure that if anything, you're in a private practice, you have someone to cover you for when you leave. That's a really big one. You want to make sure that someone is going to be there for your clients when you're gone. Should something unexpected happen, like me, I got COVID. I was gone for a week and a half. Thankfully, I had a team, so they were able to check up on my clients. But if I wasn't in that, I would be screwed and I would lose business really quickly. Definitely, if you're going to market out, know who is around your area, make those connections, whether it be the police department, city hall, fire station, any boys and girls club, those kinds of things. Make sure you make yourself known. So for all of us, including myself, who is more introvert than extrovert, that putting myself out there is really hard, but I'm going to need to learn how to get out there. A lot of people use psychology today to really put themselves out there of, this is the therapist that I want to be, or this is who I am, this is my pay, whatever it is. People do sliding scales. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but these are a lot of things I've been thinking of recently for private practice. So, but there's definitely a lot more when it comes to being out there and being on your own. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing when I leave, but make sure you guys do as well, have other clinicians around you to consult, because that is one of the best things that I'm learning that I want to keep doing even when I get licensed. I'm not going to know everything. I'm going to want to have someone nearby to be like, hey, I'm really struggling with this client. What else can I do? Help me see outside the box, because then otherwise you're going to be struggling and you're going to lose a client. And maybe it's something you could have just fixed. So that's one of the things when you're going into private practice, it is a lot, but there are a few books. I'll send it out to Jenna later about that really helped me kind of think about my private practice and what I want to do. So I'll go ahead and look into that, and so that way she can go ahead and share some of the books that I had.
Thank you. Once again, that is all the time we have. We are over time, so sorry. But thank you again to our lovely panelists. Everything you said was so insightful and absolutely helpful. There were some questions that we could not get to. And so I was wondering, would it be okay for our members to reach out to your emails that are posted on the slide? Yes. Okay. See head nods. Great. Okay. Jenna.
Again, thank you to all of our panelists for today. I know prior we announced that we would have a fourth panelist, but because they weren't able to attend, they did leave their information in the slides. And we do have another PsyD psychologist as well in the slides. So if you have any questions related to clinical psych, all their emails are in the slides and they will be sent out tomorrow. And I'll go ahead and end the recording here. Thank you for coming.